Okay, picture this. You're treading water 100 meters offshore. You're totally exhausted from a training swim, just floating in the open ocean, when suddenly you are completely surrounded. Now, you aren't being attacked, but you're being violently herded by these massive, powerful animals. Welcome to this explainer. We're going to skip the usual intro today and drop right into this high-stakes mystery in the ocean because it's one that forces us to completely rethink how the animal kingdom processes empathy, danger, and cross-species connection. Let's get into it. So, our story starts right here, October 30th, 2004, at Ocean Beach, New Zealand. A guy named Rob Howes is out on a training swim with 3 teenage lifeguards. Out of nowhere, a pod of 7 bottlenose dolphins just steams toward them. But these dolphins aren't playing around. They're behaving super erratically, swimming aggressively, and actually forcing all 4 human swimmers into this tight, inescapable cluster. Every single time Howes tries to drift away to just get some space, 2 of the really large dolphins immediately herd him right back into the center of the group. As Rob put it, the dolphins were turning tight circles on us and slapping the water with their tails. Now you're probably wondering, why on earth would they do that? Well, Rob turned in the water to see what they were reacting to. And looking down, he saw it. A 3-meter great white shark was cruising toward the group, just 2 meters below the surface. That is massive. And for 40 incredibly tense minutes, these 7 dolphins literally held their defensive formation around the humans, keeping that shark at bay until a rescue boat finally got to them. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the Ocean Beach Incident. What's totally mind-blowing about this incident isn't just that the dolphins saved human lives, it's the incredibly precise, mechanical way they went about doing it. I mean, this was absolutely not some improvised lucky miracle. They ran a highly specific biological protocol. Step 1, they formed tight circles, which actually geometrically blocks the shark's approach angles. Step 2, they slapped their tails. This creates massive turbulence and noise designed to specifically scramble a shark's lateral line, which is the sensory organ it relies on to track movement. And step 3, echelon swimming, where the vulnerable targets are shielded right in the center by the adult bodies. This is the exact step-by-step defensive playbook dolphins use to protect their own cows from predators. They took their most vital biological defense mechanism and perfectly mapped it onto completely unrelated human swimmers. Incredible, right? Moving right along to Section 2, empathy across species lines, because we really need to look beyond just Ocean Beach. Because here's the thing, Ocean Beach was absolutely not some freak occurrence or evolutionary glitch. Take a look at this case from 2007. Just off the coast of California, a surfer named Todd Endress was actually attacked, bitten 3 times by a great white shark. And as he fought for his life, a pod of dolphins appeared, formed a ring around him, and physically kept the shark away long enough for him to literally paddle his way to shore. The pattern here is incredibly consistent, right? The circling, the tail slapping, the sustained presence. These dolphins are deploying a highly functional, deeply ingrained behavior in very specific, high-stress contexts just to protect a completely different species. But what happens if we step out of the ocean entirely? Let's compare dolphins to another highly social animal, elephants. With dolphins, we just saw this immediate physical protection, these split-second decisions to shield swimmers. But with elephants, we see something arguably even more complex, prolonged emotional recognition. It's not just about reacting to immediate physical danger anymore. It's about processing grief and a deep emotional connection across species lines. And that brings us to a truly, literally astounding event from March 2012. Lawrence Anthony, who was a famous conservationist who spent years rehabilitating elephants, suddenly passed away from a heart attack. Well, following his death, 2 totally separate wild elephant herds made a deliberate 12-hour journey to his house. The sheer intentionality of this is just staggering. They stood outside his home for 2 days in what looked exactly like a vigil. And get this, according to his son, these herds hadn't even visited the house for a year and a half. Now, we know elephants can read human fear and distress signals, like our vocalization pitch or how we move, but this case shows an amazing ability to track emotional weight and individual recognition right across the species barrier. Which brings us to Section 3, the neuroscience of protection, the biology behind the empathy. So how on earth is this happening? To really understand it, we have to zoom in from macro behaviors to microbiology. Like, what exact internal tool allows these entirely different animals to process our distress? Well, the answer likely lies in von Economo neurons, which are also known as spindle cells. For a really long time, we thought these existed almost exclusively in humans and great apes.
But guess what? We found them in cetaceans like whales and dolphins, and yep, in elephants too. These are unusually long neurons concentrated in the brain's anterior cingulate and frontoinsular cortices. Or, in plain English, they are located exactly in the spot where the brain processes social judgment, emotional response, and another creature's pain. Because of their unique length and structure, they're basically built for pure speed. They allow a social animal to make incredibly fast, intuitive reads on emotionally complex, highly time-sensitive situations, like, deciding in a split second to save a drowning human.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the data. Look at the absolute numbers of these von Economo neurons. Humpback whales are packing around 24,000 of them. African elephants boast roughly 19,000. Even the smaller dolphin species have around 1,800. These massive clusters of specialized cells show up in animals that independently evolved these large, highly complex social brains. It's like nature found a reason to specifically wire these lightning-fast empathy processors into these highly social lineages. This leads us right into Section 4, the evolutionary puzzle. Why risk your own life? Because this raises a massive question, doesn't it? Evolution is normally a ruthless accountant, so why would natural selection ever build a brain that chooses to risk its own life and its own genetic survival for a totally different species? Well, scientists have debated this heavily, and there are 3 distinct theories that attempt to explain it: broad calibration, the system running as built, and the learned category. Let's break them down real quick. First up, Theory 1. This is essentially the misfire theory. The idea here is that the protective instinct in highly social mammals is basically set up with a super broad calibration. A panicked, thrashing human swimmer creates irregular surface movements and distress frequencies that actually closely mimic the signals of a vulnerable drowning dolphin calf. In this theory, the dolphin's protective protocol fires off automatically before the brain even has time to run a species-specific check. So it's a mistake, but a noble one. Then we have Theory 2, which looks at this from a totally different angle, the system running as built theory. Think about it. Bottlenose dolphins form these complex, long-term political alliances with completely unrelated males. Elephants routinely adopt orphaned calves from outside their own family groups. Their social architecture is already designed to extend way beyond their immediate gene pool. So if their brain is hardwired to track general vulnerability and distress, then shielding a human isn't a misfire at all. It's literally just the empathy system doing exactly what it was built to do, just encountering a new type of stimulus. And then there's Theory 3, which I find absolutely fascinating, the learned category. Think about how much interaction coastal dolphins have with humans over generations. It is entirely possible that an animal with this insane level of social cognition, repeatedly exposed to us, has actually learned and built a working template for what human distress looks like. Actually, scratch that, they aren't confusing us for calves at all. They know exactly what we are. They know we are drowning, and they are executing a learned, intentional response to save us. Let's wrap things up with Section 5, a byproduct of complexity, because this is definitely not just a glitch. And this brilliantly illustrates a really important point. As we get to the end of this explainer, we really need to dismantle that romantic Disney view of these animals. They are not simply oceanic angels. Their behavior shows a really deep, dark duality. On one hand, sure, we have these profound protective behaviors, shielding swimmers, mourning the dead. But on the exact same token, these same animals are capable of brutal, calculated violence. Dolphins engage in infanticide and territorial killings. Elephants are fully capable of unprovoked charging and trampling. These are wild animals, not domesticated pets. And that duality is exactly the point. The animal capable of coordinated murder is the exact same animal capable of absorbing mortal risks to save a total stranger. So here is the core takeaway you should leave with today. Cross-species altruism is a byproduct of social complexity, not a glitch. When natural selection builds a brain capable of reading emotional states quickly and at a massive scale, that capacity will inevitably and occasionally extend outside its own species boundary. To have the deep social bonds required for their own survival, they absolutely must possess a neural architecture so powerful that it sometimes beautifully spills over onto us. Which leaves us with this final lingering thought to consider, because remember, we share these exact same von Economo neurons. We share this exact same duality. So what does it mean for us as humans if the exact same brain architecture that is capable of waging calculated territorial war is also the exact same architecture that can simply choose to save a drowning stranger? It's a pretty profound reminder of the complex emotional mechanics we share with the world around us. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.